One of my favorite scenes in the movie is the conversion scene.
Could anyone help?
It spoke to me the most in who Karla Faye really was.
I could not see.
The change
Was whispering.
that God offers all of us to change our lives, to take it and do 180 was so visually presented in the conversion scene. And so that just struck me like an arrow in my heart. And what forgiveness God gave her was also offered to me and everyone else. And that was what was the most profound scene in the whole movie for me. Shooting Forevermore was a different experience for me than shooting any of the other projects that I've worked on in the past. There was a spiritual element that was apparent from the get-go. One of the things that started becoming real apparent that God really had his hand on this from the very beginning, in Karla's life, in her story, in Dana's life as well, and then in Helen Gibson in writing the film and producing it, and eventually directing it. But I noticed that right away as we started having communion every morning at the beginning of the shoot, and then the prayers that went on throughout the day, between scenes, between takes. It was just incredible. And then what started being revealed to me was the true life of Karla Faye Tucker, of who she really was, the spiritual life that she had, the union she had with Christ, and the intimacy that she had that I was lacking in my life, actually. After this film, it became something that I sought after and desired more so than ever. There were times when we're shooting a scene, and I have my eye on the eye cup of the camera, and I'm trying to focus, but it's filling up with tears. I have to drain it afterward. It was to that point where there were scenes there that just hit me so much emotionally that I couldn't help it. It just was an automatic response. And so realizing how Christ had changed her life and how grateful she was for that came shining through. And also the power of forgiveness in someone's life. If he can forgive a pickaxe murderer, he can forgive us as well. So that was profound in my life in shooting it. Editing a project usually takes a lot more time than actually producing the project. So what happens is that you spend a lot of time with the tapes and going over lines and actors' performances. And so what happened during editing was even more profound than what occurred on set. Once I started getting into the project and spending the time in doing the post, Karla's message of forgiveness, her life, her spiritual intimacy with Christ came through even more. What started occurring was an absolute phenomena that I've never experienced before. Going into the editing room for me became a spiritual experience. It became a holy place for me. It was almost as if I was entering the Holy of Holies when I went to edit. I felt a great responsibility in going in to make sure that I was doing justice to Karla's testimony. And so I went in with fear and reverence every time I sat down in the editing bay. I prayed every time before, during, and there were certain scenes that were so emotional for me that as I was editing, I am weeping. And it's difficult to edit when you're crying all the time. But this is what happened to me, because I realized the awe and reverence that she had for Christ, I had also in putting this project together. And so it brought me closer to God, no doubt, but also gave me a spiritual insight that I never had before into how we could have an intimacy with Christ and a love affair basically with him, and have that oneness. And so it became hollow ground, where we were editing. It became an altar. And God was there. God was through it all. He was in it. He was in my hands as I was using the controls and making the edits. And he definitely directed all those edit decisions and the music selections and everything. So I think that it actually comes across as you watch the film, that you know that God is in this thing and that he is showing his love and his forgiveness through it to everyone.